Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are rolling along in these playoffs. Got a couple game twos and a game three to get into here on this slate for you guys tonight. We are going to be kicking things off with the C's still playing host to the Nets. KD looking for a bounce back game. Kyrie looking to continue staying hot. And obviously the Celtics would like to continue winning. So we'll take a look at some of the best bets in here. Got a few player props as well. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Got a couple other videos. Got every game video up for you, as well as a player props video that will continue to bring you each and every day of these NBA playoffs. And like we keep saying, every single playoff game video as well, including those weekend ones for you guys. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's jump into it.
Yeah, the Nets once again +4 at Boston, now down to +3.5 or 3 some places as they're getting some action for sure. That total went up to 227. It was 224, I believe, in game one, and now it's at 226. So a little bit higher, still a pretty exploitable total if you like both teams to continue to score. With Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, that is what the Nets do, and they do not get many stops. But the other two games that we will break down for you in this episode on this Wednesday night, all Eastern Conference tonight, Josh. We got Sixers -2 at Toronto to follow at 8 p.m. here. That total is at 217. And then the Bulls are +10 again at Milwaukee, total at 225.5, down from 229 after their last game was just a horrendous offensive showing of the last three quarters, at least for the Bucks, and the whole game for the Bulls, as we always expected. I don't think there's going to be a lack of offense, though, in Boston. The Nets, at this point, they know what they have to do to win, and that's they need both of their superstars to have superstar games. And KD did not, and they still almost won because Kyrie went even beyond the margins in terms of his performance, fired up by that TD Garden crowd that continues to egg him on, and he thrives on it. I mean, he had 39 points in a closeout game last May at Boston, 39 points again, shot 12 for 20 from the field, and he's hitting 4.7 threes now in his last 3 trips to TD Garden at a 52% clip. Lots of props that are spicy to take on Kyrie again. We do expect Durant to bounce back, of course, after he went 9 for 24 with 6 turnovers, 23 points, 3 assists. But Kyrie should still get his. I mean, the Nets don't have many third bananas, as Josh loves to talk about the bananas in tow. I mean, their bananas are frankly pretty terrible. I mean, they might have the worst supporting cast outside of Joker in terms of how the pieces fit. There's just not a lot of great options for Steve Nash, who is almost a rookie coach, and his best assistant last year was Ime Udoka. So, I mean, how much of an edge is Brooklyn going to have in terms of the X's and O's here? Boston,
I give it to the Celtics. Yeah.
right. Yeah. Boston has a huge edge and a really obvious edge that says, when Brooklyn has to go small, we can just punish them inside. And they did. They had a 43-29 rebounding advantage, 14 offensive rebounds, 18 second chance points, a 54-32 advantage on paint points in game one. And it could have been worse for Brooklyn. I don't feel I'm being too much of a homer here to say that Brooklyn did benefit from a lot of no calls down the stretch once Kyrie and KD were both in foul trouble, but Kyrie particularly. The Nets, the Celtics were picking on him down low and attacking him in transition. And he would do a lot of really lazy defense where he was flat-footed and just reach. And if you're not a superstar, you just get called for those fouls straight up, whether you get ball or arm or nothing, because it just looks bad. And frankly, they're lucky he didn't pick up a 5th foul or a 6th foul down the stretch. I guess he probably fouled Jason Tatum on that buzzer beater. Well, that's an aside. I mean, that is something to watch, though. I mean, if the Nets' margin for error is just so small that if one of those guys has to sit, they're in big trouble. I mean, the Celtics have 5-7 contributors. The Nets can hope they get a spike game from one of these guards. I mean, Dragic had his spike game in game one without them getting totally exploited on the other end. And Boston, missed a few bunnies, didn't get a free throw advantage. Like I'm saying, they did not get the benefit of that whistle down the stretch. So, I mean, that is all to say that Kyrie is somebody to bet on at 28.5 points here. It's interesting to take him plus 290 to lead this game in scoring again. Interesting to bet on him plus 230 to lead the series in scoring. The Nets, I don't know if they can win this series. There's a lot of moving parts still. I wouldn't really bet the series because Ben Simmons, now cleared for contact, might return around game 5. Rob Williams, on track to maybe return game 5 or 6. So a lot of moving parts, but you can bet just plus 170 for this to go 7 and not pick a winner, because that's what everybody wants to see and what everybody expects. I mean, this is an incredible first round series. Neither team seems likely to go home. In this particular game, I just like the Nets over at 111.5 rather than the Celtics, which is 3 or 4 points higher. I mean, in 17 games with KD and Kyrie on the floor, they have a 126 offensive rating, and they shot 54% from the field, 46% from deep as a team in game 1, despite, again, KD, who I think you mentioned had only a few games below 40% in his playoff career, having a down game. And because the Celtics dedicated so many resources and so much of the game plan to bottling him up, Kyrie excelled in one-on-one matchups. He's now forced Marcus Smart, Defensive Player of the Year, into a 126 defensive rating in 3 consecutive meetings. There's just not much you can do with him. I mean, game plan, what are you in a game plan for? Like, he just instinctually counters whatever you put out there and gets buckets, especially if you're going to egg him on with the Garden. I hope the Garden gives him the silent treatment. Just turns the other side tonight. See how that goes, because they are not helping by any means.
Quit poking the dragon. Yeah,
yeah. And just the last thing to watch is Boston's struggles in the fourth quarter in close games. That is why we almost went under in game 1, because all of a sudden, they can't score. They start looking for those whistles, which didn't come. And they struggle down the stretch. They hadn't been in many close games because they've been crushing teams. So I think we get another close game, and that's why you definitely lean towards Brooklyn covering. Brooklyn as a teaser to plus 7 with whatever other result you'd like here, maybe the over with this game. Feel very confident about that, and I think there's no way they score less than 112 in this extremely important game too.
Yeah, no, that adds up. I mean, you could say that both these teams underperformed on offense to a degree. I mean, at least a couple of the stars, I would say. It's interesting. Jaylen Brown still ended up with 23 points, but those 23 points seem like he really, really worked for them. He wasn't really making those open bunnies that he usually makes. I mean, call them bunnies, but even those, open, let's say 12 footers after he blows by a guy from the 3-point line, a lot of stuff just wasn't going in for him. And I mean, he continues to attack, which is good, as that's what they need is his downhill ability. I think, 6 free throw attempts is probably around what you expect. Maybe you'd like a couple more for him. If he gets closer to 10, obviously he's now having a much better game for you. But, not necessarily even knocking Jaylen. I mean, then you look at the other side, obviously KD, not a great game. Yeah, I would say it was great defense. I'm not going to go ahead and knock that, but there were a few threes that left him doing the weird thing where he scratches his head and looks up at the scoreboard and is just like, oh, I don't know what happened. And it was like, you just missed an open 3. And he's so not used to it that he looks so confused when it happens. And 1 for 5 from 3. And I would say, only one of those misses was really contested. So, just from watching that game over and over, it was a really, really instant classic, as we know. So yeah, things I like, I do like KD to have a bounce back game. As you mentioned, I did steal a tweet from someone where they said that KD had only shot under 40% 3 other times before this one in a playoff game, and he's played, I don't know, dozens and dozens of playoff games at this point. So that's an incredible feat. And so, I do expect a bounce back game from him. I do kind of like the over again. It does scare me a little bit more because of that slow pace. Like you mentioned, I think Boston does have the ability to maybe play a little bit better on defense in certain areas. Obviously, Kyrie, there's not much you can do with that, but Kyrie and KD combined for 61. Kyrie just did most of the heavy lifting by scoring 39. And I think if you ask yourself, what do they need to do, these two stars, to win this series? it's 60 to 70 points, easy. 60 is kind of the minimum for them in order for them to be considered, a team to win this game. I do think they have, like you were kind of knocking their bench, but the thing is like, despite the fact that it's not full of guys that you depend on consistently in terms of Bruce Brown, Seth Curry, Patty Mills, Nick Claxton, and even Goran at this point, who played 26 and a half minutes. You can expect it's a kind of a numbers game where you expect one, maybe even two of those guys to have a game that's slightly above the margins, as you say, and then you can keep them in the game. So it's almost like a by committee, but I think the coaching advantage is heavily with Boston, to be honest, because Steve Nash, I don't think we'll know what type of coach he is. I think he's a great manager of people. I think the fact that this team still likes each other, and James Harden aside, the fact that this team still likes each other and is still playing together is a testament to his coach, his people skills. I don't think we'll know what type of X's and O's coach he is until he doesn't have the likes of two of the best offensive players in the last 30 years on his team at the exact same time. And two of the greatest ever. Shout out the snub that Kyrie got on the top 75 there. I think Kyrie, I love him to continue what he's doing. I think KD's the one who is likely to have less of an impact when they're on the road and you've got the Kyrie being poked and prodded by these fans, and just not a good idea with him, man. Like, he's really assumed a villain role in a pretty classic way for himself that I think is benefiting him and his play and his team. So I would shut up if I was Boston's fans, but I don't think we expect that to happen. I do like this to go 7. I think plus 170 is great odds right now, because I think after Brooklyn might pull out this game, if they don't pull out this game, I still like them to win 2 in a row at home, to be honest. It's not out of the question. And I think that there's a good likelihood that they win this game. And like I told you before we got on air, until I see a huge disparity in this series, or there's a game like game 1, but then Kyrie doesn't do inhumane things on the court that just seem impossible to most people, and then the Nets lose in an underwhelming offensive way, then those odds for that game 7 might even get better, but I don't see that happening. I see some form of outcome here where it's either a super close game, you get the points with the dog. If the C's were underdogs by 4 points, I would pick them, just because I think every game right now is a pick 'em. And as a result, I think the series to go 7 at plus 170 is only going to go down as we move forward. So I like that bet. I like Kyrie to lead the series in scoring. And I like Brooklyn to cover tonight.
You said inhumane from Kyrie Irving. It made me think of Marv Albert, with no regard for human life.
That's how he was playing, right?
Yeah, the numbers are in support of Brooklyn covering as well. They love being the road dog in this spot. 11-6 against the spread this season as road dogs, also 16-10 as underdogs. And those games, coincidentally, 16-10. I'm sorry, I meant 16-10 to the over as well. Also 11-6 to the over in these division games. It's sort of the more intense the game is going to be, the more they're going to score and know they're going to give up points at the other end. It's pretty fitting that Kyrie and KD, after their offensive performance, were the worst defenders on that final possession, right? I mean, KD was just floating around the 3-point line, looking around, and Kyrie caught flat-footed yet again. Could have just stood straight up and made Tatum make a weird bunny, but yet again reached, does everything you're taught not to do. So they're low on energy and not great defenders. And then, I don't mean to knock the Nets role players. I just think the pieces don't necessarily fit in terms of how, crafting a good lineup that's going to be good at both ends of the floor, right? I mean, you can play Bruce Brown, you can play Drummond, and then it's really just about ISO. They had the second lowest assist rate in the playoffs thus far. They had the second lowest number of threes attempted because they couldn't keep Seth Curry on the floor because he can't guard anybody. Same thing with Patty Mills. So it is a lot of tough decisions for Nash in terms of getting that. And I think they just have to trade offense for defense, because Boston, their offensive rating is close to 125 at home in their last 10. They have room to go up here as they continue to exploit those mismatches and other guys that their depth comes to show. They've gone over in 4 of their last 5 playoff games against Brooklyn, but only covered in 1 of those games, including failing to cover last time out. Collapsing down the stretch on offense makes me think you could bet the over before this game starts, but if you see it start to rise, maybe live bet that under down the stretch, because It's an intense game, man. It's like the Eastern Conference Finals right now, and I don't think there's going to be a ton of scoring in a close game down the stretch.
That's fair. Well, I mean, there was some pretty good offense. I mean, specifically from Kyrie in that fourth quarter. But I would agree that it's likely to get slower and a bit choppier. So, I still get worried because I do think we're going to continue to get 60 combined from those two stars on Brooklyn, and I do think that some form of the two stars on Boston plus 2 to 3 guys that can put up 20 plus in the supporting cast as well now, between especially like Horford, Smart, and Derek White. I think there's a lot to like there. I think, this is going to go 7. This is going to be a great series. I think I'm kind of realizing that basically the winner of the next round, 2 versus 3 or 7 versus 3, whoever wins this net series and then takes on the Bucks in the next series, that's our Eastern Conference champion to me, unless this is just a brutal series where you sleep on Miami because these teams just beat the crap out of each other, right? And then you get to Miami and they're a tough team, and now I'm convincing myself that it's worth money to put money on them for that future, because I'm just looking at Eastern Conference champs right now. Milwaukee's plus 220, so not great value there, although I do think the fact that they will only have one tough series before they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, whereas the Celtics or Nets will have had 2 really tough series. The Heat are also probably going to continue to get to kind of walk into that seems unfair. They're going to have to play Philly next. So everyone will have one tough series when they get to the conference finals. I don't believe in Philly, I guess, is my point, but I'm really just sort of fluctuating between those 3 teams in Boston, or excuse me, I guess 4 really. The winner of this series, and then Milwaukee and Miami, all 3-ish 4 teams really have a shot. There's still good money to good juice available on those teams there. I mean, the Heat at plus 330 right now are looking better, but Boston plus 310
if
doesn't
I can
look
just
bad.
interject, I mean, you're talking about what I wanted to bet before the playoffs started, which is just Eastern Conference to win the championship. And that is close, is around minus 120 if you can find it. Because all those teams, we just saw Phoenix lost and now Devin Booker's injured. The Warriors, I don't necessarily believe in. I mean, while those teams will be tired, they will also be way more battle tested. The East is so much stronger at the top right now.
Such a great point, and I wish I had followed you on that. I'll take a look at what it is now. It probably went down with the Suns looking a lot less formidable, depending on that Devin Booker injury, and obviously now 1-1 in that series. Eastern Conference champion looks really, really good right now. Hopefully there's still some juice to be made there.